Cool. Wonderful. Today's one of my favorite classes.
Glad I came.
All right. I'll bet. First of all, how are we doing on our daily 10-4? Connecting with 10 people in the database, 10 handwritten notes.
Not 10.
Not 10, 20,
No.
30?
5.
4, oh, well.
And
That's
any emails?
No,
No?
no.
No emails.
If emails counted, I sent out 1,800 this weekend. And so I don't have to do anything again. It doesn't count.
So you don't count the emails?
No, handwritten notes. This is old school.
So I added 5 contacts,
Okay.
3 notes, and I got 2 appointments.
Well, that's great. That's buyers?
Right.
All right, we'll talk about that then today. This is good. Has everybody found an accountability partner, a script partner? All right. I believe all of you. I'm sure you have. What we're going to do is, I would like to do is go to Get Your Head in the Game, which is on the handout, I think probably page 8 or 7-4. And what we're talking about today is called the buyer consultation. It says it's a tremendous opportunity to pave the way to an effective and long-term relationship with a buyer. A unhurried and in-depth meeting with a buyer. This is, a unhurried and in-depth meeting. My metaphor of how this ought to work would be something similar to a complete medical exam. Right? The question always is, have you had one recently? And the answer never is, I don't know. All right, you understand? Because if you've had one, you know. And if you've had one, it was probably uncomfortable at times. There's a lot of probing and all of that. But usually people feel better when it's over. Isn't that right? And, hi, come on in. There's some handouts here in the sign-in sheet. Welcome. We've just gotten started. I haven't told any jokes yet, so it's okay. All right. So we're starting on page 7-4. So the idea of the buyer consultation, and one of the things that when I tell agents that they ought to come to this class, I tell them that this particular session is about buyer loyalty, right? And the metaphor again with the complete medical exam, unhurried and in depth. If you've had a complete medical exam recently, you would know it, right? People never say, I'm not sure if I did or I didn't. But the point is that even though it may be uncomfortable while it's going on, at the end of it, we're usually happier that it's over, and it is unlikely that our first thought when we're done with a complete medical exam is, I ought to go talk to another doctor, right? You understand? Because the last thing you want to do after you've had one is go meet other doctors. And so this is also, I hope you can see where my metaphor is going. If you do this right with a buyer, they're not going to want to be going out and doing it again. Over on the left, it talks about the win for you is a systematic approach to working buyers that will answer questions buyers didn't even know they had and sweep objections off the table even before they come up. Also, for your customers, the advantage of doing this right is that it's going to save them hours of time in the home search. We're going to explain how that's actually what you might want to say. I know that there are many people in the real estate business who don't like to work with buyers. I've met many of them, and some have said, I don't work with buyers. The problem, the old line is buyers are liars, but sellers are gellers, and the thing with buyers is that the reason why agents get frustrated is because they spend a lot of time and they show them property and they spend a lot more time and then they don't get paid. And after that's happened a few times, you can get into the mindset that I'm wasting my time with buyers. What I believe works is that if you have a system for working with buyers, and you need to have enough buyers so that those who don't want to participate in your system don't have to. Is there some- come on in. That's okay. I know some people just want to stand by the door. All right, so an unhurried and in-depth meeting, right? Which means we're not talking about 5 minutes when we're at the house showing them property. We're probably not talking about 5, 10, 15 minutes before we take them out at the office to show them property. And what we want to do at this meeting is to delve into the needs, wants, values of buyers, showcase your services, and most importantly, educate and set expectations for how you're going to work. What that means in real language is you're going to want to get an exclusive commitment from them to work with you. All right, that's where we're going with this. Now, by the way, one of the postcards that I used to send to renters, one of the calls to action that I would put on the website, one of the calls to actions that I'd put into emails was always free home buying consultation. And that's what I was offering people. Now, the reality is that if you sent out 1,000 of those postcards, not a lot of people call you up for one. The good news is everybody that does is coming in for one of these. All right, you understand? If anybody who agrees to that is going to show up for an unhurried and in-depth meeting. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of working with buyers. The best way to achieve that goal is to clearly establish the process of finding and buying a home so that you can work as a coordinated team. The idea is we want to explain to them the process and get their buy-in and their commitment to follow it. There's a story from Sean Kokoska, who is a mega agent, and he tells a story about having taken time off. My story is one night I had a dinner date, and the phone rang, and somebody wanted to look at one of my listings. And so I canceled the dinner date, and I went to show him the home. I had not met with him before, but hey, it was one of my listings, and so we're looking around the property. The husband knocked over something, like a little vase, which broke, right? And after we were done, I'm asking them, I asked the husband, so where do you work? And he said, I'm between jobs right now. Oh. I looked at the wife. How about you? She says, well, we moved here just recently. I'm looking too. They were unemployed, right? So I guess I didn't need to cancel a dinner date and rush over to help let them in to break something in my client's house, right? Probably not. Then there's the example here where Sean talks about spending time. By the way, real estate agents have 1 million of these, right? If you ask people, real estate agents are like fishermen. Right, old fishermen, they're always talking about the ones that got away, right? They always, it was a butte. Must have been this big, right? Almost had him in the right. That's how they all talk like that. And so he goes to the process of showing property, and they say, thanks for letting us inside. We'll have our real estate broke up and write our offer today. The problem is that many people that are not in real estate don't understand how the real estate business works. And one of the things I'm going to share with you is a dialogue that I wrote that I used to use. And part of what I would do is explain the process. Some people, I think, believe that we're paid by the hour, right? Or paid by every house we show, or paid by the mile. Paid by the word, wouldn't that be right? Some of us would be very wealthy. All right. And notice it says this is a turning point. That bitter disappointment on such a special day led to the creation of a system. I was much less likely to show homes after I did it to the unemployed bankrupt arsonists or whoever they were that wanted to look at the home at dinner time. It was like a Friday night, as I believe. You can either learn this the hard way, right, through pain and suffering, or you can start with a system. which we're going to talk about. So the countdown to payday, the leads lead to appointments, and appointments lead to agreements. Notice this is the first time we've blocked that out. We're talking about agreements today. So our plan of action, we're going to set the stage, do a needs analysis, educate buyers, set service expectations, present a value proposition, close for an agreement. That one will be an important one, and establish the next steps. There's an affirmation. I always say the right thing and people appreciate what I share with them. This is valuable programming software for the mind. If you believe that all buyers are liars and it doesn't matter that they're not going to work with you, that they're not going to like you, that you don't have anything of value, you might be right. So in the make it happen, do the consultation right and you close more buyers in less time. Skip it and you will spend more of your time closing fewer transactions. The more often you show homes to people who you have not met with in the office, the less happy you're going to be. Right? I will admit that I have showed homes to people that I had not met with first and sold them homes. But the percentage of people that I sold homes to was really, really high for people that I met with. Right? In other words, one was 90% and the other one was like 9%. Right? I mean, the difference is dramatic. I actually think that one of the worst things that can happen is that when you're new, somebody calls you up and says, I want to look at a house, will you show it to me? And you say, yes, go and show it, and they buy that house, right? Because then that's what you're going to do every time, right? You understand? That's sometimes the worst. The best thing is that if they already have an agent or they can't afford to buy and your car breaks down in the rain on the way and it's really painful and you say, I'm never going to do this again, right? That might even be better. The diagram shows the 7 steps in the buyer consultation, which we're going to go through. Notice they're speaking and listening. One of the slides, and one of the things that I'm going to do for everyone who's participating is I've, in Google Drive, created a folder. I actually have a couple, and I've dumped into them all of my scripts and samples and PowerPoint presentations and things that I used to use with buyers. I have a separate one for home buying seminars, which I'm not going to do today. That's an advanced class. But one of the things that I point out is how good of a listener are you, right? Because being good with buyers is more about listening than it is talking, right? That's also true for sellers, but real estate agents don't necessarily believe that. The truth, Keller Williams research shows 91% of our agents conducted a buyer consultation before showing a buyer a home. At least that's what they say when they were asked. But we're much bigger on pushing this than many other organizations. Notice it says use your buyer's guide as a tool throughout the consultation to keep you on track. Does everybody that was here in the previous one remember how to find that? All right. So we're going to set the stage, do the needs analysis, a little bit of talking, a lot of listening, share your value proposition, educate buyers, set service expectations, and close for the agreement. We're going to go over some of the different agreements that you would use. Set the stage. When they greet them warmly and offer them something to drink, I think that means a non-alcoholic beverage, right? It's and by the way, it's always another reason to meet them at the office is let's say you're going to meet them at the house and they arrive early and they don't like the outside of the house. A lot of times they'll just leave, right? And they don't always call and let you know that they've just left. And then you show up and you're there waiting for them to show up, and after 20-30 minutes, we're on 7-8, 7-8, and then after 30 minutes you get discouraged and drive away. If you're at the office, you could be calling people, right? You're 10 people and making connections with 10 people and putting people in the database and practicing your scripts. Don't stand at the front of the office waiting for them. Right, pacing back and forth in front of the door. You know, I mean, you drive to your doctor's office and you're in the parking lot and you see your doctor looking out the window, out through the blinds at you. That's probably not a good image, right? It's not a good image to have, right? Even give them a brief tour, introduce them to the director. Do we have a director of First Impressions? Yes, I think so. And anybody that might be involved in their transaction, such as a closing coordinator. Seeing professionals at work will inspire confidence. Use one of the many office things we have. It's about take time to appreciate. Let's go on to do the needs analysis. So we have samples of buyer questionnaires. If you don't like ours, if you were to Google search for buyer wants and needs questionnaires, checklists, you're going to find a lot of them. I used to use a blank piece of paper and would ask questions. We have forms for you to ask. And what we're going to, I'm going to spend some time on a few of these. You should listen and take notes. If people are taking notes when somebody's talking and other people are taking notes, it makes the person who's talking feel like their message is important. I have no idea how that feels because people never take notes when I'm talking, but I've heard that it makes people feel good if when somebody's talking the other person is taking notes because it shows they're listening. Right? It shows they're listening. Now, even if one of the things that you're going to find, the reason that people say buyers are liars is oftentimes what they tell you they want to buy is not what they buy. Right? Do you understand that? And you need to understand that what they tell you they want may not be what they buy. And you should take notes anyhow and pretend that this is exactly what they're going to buy. Right? But even though they may not.
When do you get clarity?
When you start showing homes. Okay. Be specific. You can't meet and exceed a buyer's wants and needs and values if you don't know what they are. Ask questions and dig deeper using the "what about that is important to you" question. So what I always wanted to do was to divide it into their wants and their needs. All right. What is it that, because you understand there's a difference between those two. What would you want? Well, we would like a relatively new home, close enough to the freeway so it's easy for us to commute, but not so close that we could hear it, in a good school district, with a separate dining room. We would like did you understand this is an old metaphor, so some of you may not are too young to get it, but there used to be this thing called the Sears catalog, right? You know. And somebody was, what's a Sears? It was a catalog, right? And it would be like giving this catalog to your kids and telling them to go through it and circle anything they want for Christmas, right? Do you understand what you're going to end up with is like 2,000 things circled. And so at the end of this, after they've described this house that doesn't exist, they're going to say, and we want it to be really cheap, right? You know, right? That's what they want, right? We know that's what they want, but then we have to start going through that list, right? So what you keep doing is and when they say, well, it has to be close to where we work, why is that important to you? Because what we're going to find is that what they want, they probably can't get for the price that they want. What else? What else? What else? Until they say, uncle, right? I can't think of anything else. Ask outside the ideal. So when people would say to me, I learned this the hard way. I had a good friend, I thought, who wanted to buy a condo down in Oregon Hill, and she said, I do not want to see anything over this price. I do not want to see. Nothing over this price. So I didn't show her anything over that price. And then one day, I called her up to say, do you want to, look at homes on Saturday? And she said, no, I don't think we need to. Not anymore. And I said, well, why not? And she said, well, I put an offer on one. And she had a friend who was in the loan business, who had a friend who worked at another real estate company, who showed her a home, and they made an offer on it. And I said, well, what about the fact that I was, working with you? She said, well, you didn't show me that one. And I said, well, what? And I looked it up, and it was $20,000 over the price that she said she did not want to see. Right? Do you understand how people get frustrated with buyers? They say buyers are liars, right? So what I learned to do is when somebody says, first of all, I want them pre-approved, and I want to know exactly how much they can actually afford. Right? And then if they say, I don't want to see anything over this, I'd say, oh, I understand what you're saying. Right? That's your limit. You don't want to go above it. I get you. I get you. But let me ask you this. Supposing I found this great house. It had everything you were looking for and more. But the only problem was it was just a little bit more than that amount. Are you telling me you don't even want to hear about it? Right? Is that what you're saying? You don't even want to see it. Right? And then almost every time they'd say, well, no, we'd like to look at it. If it was... So they say we want 4 bedrooms. I understand. That's great. You got a lot of kids. Yeah, 4 bedrooms. That'd be nice. Well, let me ask you this. Supposing I found a house that was the right price, right neighborhood, right everything was perfect except it only had 3 bedrooms. Are you saying don't even show it to you? Do you understand the mistake many agents make when they're doing the wants and needs analysis is they're trying to narrow it down. This is not the time to narrow it down. This is the time to expand the list, right? Do you understand? If you let them narrow it down too much, that house does not exist, right? So it's expand the list. We're in a seller's market. We need to expand the list. Do you understand what I mean by ask outside? Everything they say they want, ask them if there was any way. If they said, well, we don't want to drive more than 20 minutes to get to work, I understand how you feel. I hate to drive, commuter traffic too, So what if I found a house that was just perfect, except it was a little teensy bit further away, right? Does everybody get the idea? You need to do this on everything. And what you'll find is their list gets bigger. There was one agent, he was an engineer, who'd have thought, former engineer, and his idea is that he had devised this computer program that asked like every single question based upon every little sub-criteria of the multiple listing service with the idea that they would answer it and he'd find them just the house. This is not how it works, right? Do you understand? It just doesn't work that way. Never assume. Never assume. This, by the way, we're going to talk about this on showing homes too. Do not assume. Right? Don't say, well, you probably don't want to live in that neighborhood. Right? I showed a house. They wanted to buy a duplex or a fourplex in the downtown area. This place had additions without permits that were obvious and disclosed. The tenant had a pet snake that was crawling around that was in the walls. They had a lizard and an iguana. I'm not kidding. This place was horrible. And I wanted to say, this is awful, right? And I asked her, I looked at her, I said, what do you think? And she says, I think we'll buy it. And I thought, okay, all right. We never know. I said, do you want the snake to stay, or should I put that in the, they didn't have any mice. So ask about household, not family. Make it a dialogue. Now, the approach that I used to take, the 4 steps in any sale is rapport, qualify, show, and close. And I have some of this in my rapport, R-A-P-P-O-R-T, or rapport. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Qualify, which could mean, do you have any money? But it also could mean asking them, my definition of qualifying is to find the problems that they have in achieving their goal. Show is number 3. Show is to show how you can solve their problems. And close is to ask for a decision. Rapport, qualify, find problems, show how you can solve problems, and close. So when I would meet with buyers, I would turn the chair sort of sideways, right, sitting at the table, so that I wasn't like facing directly, and I would ask them. By the way, I have lists of all these questions in my supplemental materials, asking them about their family, their kids, how old, do you have people in the area, what brought you to the area, what do you do, what did you do before, what do you like to do outside of work, all that. I mean, just a whole bunch of questions. And I would sort of take notes, but not so much at this point. And then when I got to the qualifying questions, I would turn my chair so that it was facing the table, pull it forward, pick up my pen, and you understand, and I'm giving cues that we have moved from personal to professional, right? Now it's business, right? And I'll show you my, and I would ask their permission. Is it okay for me to ask you, in order for me to serve you best, I'm going to have to ask you a series of questions. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? They might be personal, but they're necessary in order to help you buy a home. Is that okay? If they say yes to that, they've pretty much let you agree that you could ask them anything, right? And I would ask them just about anything. All right, so sample needs analysis dialogue. Have we mentioned that you should practice scripts? Let's say we're walking up to your home. What does it look like from the outside? How many stories? What style? What type of construction? Let's talk about the inside. And one of the things that we're going to do is, we're going to watch a video while I print another copy of this.
Mike, you said you had questions in your supplemental.
Yeah, I do.
Where do we get that?
I'm going to, those of you that I have emails for, which is everybody, pretty much, but not everybody, I'm going to send you a link to the folder.
Thank you.
And if you don't think I have your email, then you need to send me an email to remind me.
When will you send that?
This afternoon, after this class. All right. This is called the Needs Analysis, and we're going to watch a little video.
Needs analysis, the systematic process of collecting information about needs, wants, and desires that is used to establish and define goals. Step 2 of the buyer consultation is the needs analysis. Only when you understand what is ultimately important to your customers can you deliver it. Many agents ask their clients, "What do you want in a house?" and stop there. They don't realize the answer to that question isn't the same as "What do you need?" or "What's important to you?" Determining your customer's core wants, needs, and values is a process. Draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper and write needs on the left and wants on the right, and use it to track their needs and wants as you go through this process. At this point, you will have a clear understanding of what buyers need versus what they want, but you are not done. Now, you want to drill down and uncover their values by finding out why they need and want what they do. Use this question. What about blank is important to you? Let's see how it works. Say your buyer has told you that they want or need a large yard.
Mike, you cannot see anything.
Michael, we can't see it.
What's about a large yard that's important?
Your buyer says,
I'm not translucent.
you ask,
We like gardening. What's important about gardening?
your buyer says, I like to spend time outdoors. It helps me relax. You ask,
If you feel relaxed, then what's important about being relaxed?
your buyer says, when I'm relaxed, I can spend more quality time with my wife. Bullseye. A large yard equals family. At this point, you have uncovered a value. You can now look for other ways it applies to your buyer.
A large yard is important because it allows you to spend quality time with your wife, correct? So what else about your new home would be important to you in terms of spending more time with your wife?
Exercise. Find a partner in class and ask them about their favorite part of their house and why it's important. Drill down with your questions to find out why.
Sorry about blocking it. What we're going to do is, we're not going to do that exercise because I have other things I need to cover. I think there's a copy of the handout probably. So there's a questionnaire. Follow the questionnaire. Lifestyle. A customizable version of this is available in your e-Edge Buyer's Guide Toolkit. And
What's that?
it's not, pardon me?
What's that? Somebody's throwing.
It's my pacemaker going off. So you can see it's broken down: lifestyle, location, house, general, house, interior, kitchen. One of the few tips that I would have for this is that you might want to take a look at and print out a copy of either the Class 1 or Class 2 multiple listing service data form, which is a form that you can get from the MLS, which has all the little boxes that an agent could pick if they were putting it into the MLS, so you can see what criteria are searchable. Because one of the things that somebody says, I want an equestrian property. Guess what? That's not a box, right? You understand? You could search comments, but that's not a box. So you might want to familiarize yourself with what fields are searchable.
Yeah, sorry, what did you call that?
It's called a Class 1 and Class 2 data form, which is provided by Class 1 means a single-family home, Class 2 means a condo or townhouse, and the data forms are usually 2 pages legal sized, but they'll print out an 8.5 by 11, just really small. And what it does is it shows all of the different boxes that could be checked when you're putting a listing into the MLS. It's just nice to know that. Truth, there's a comment here from the 2010 NAR profile of home buyers and sellers. One of the things that I'm putting in that my secret folder is a copy of the 2011 profile of home buyers and sellers from the National Association of Realtors. And 2012, by the way, would look probably a lot different. But there's some useful information. Only 37% in last year. Now, just so you understand, a 2011 profile means 2010 data, right? There's a or is that right? No, the 2012 profile was for 2011. Anyhow, I guess this is 2011 data. I have to think about that. The 37% were first-time home buyers. It has the age was 45, the 2010, so this is the data that they're going on, is 2010. I don't know, I don't believe there's a 2012 one out. I'll have to look. 64% of home buyers were married, but one of the things that you might be interested in here is a section about the home buying search. Real estate agents were considered to be useful by 98% of the buyer. And anyhow, this is all you don't have you're not going to find this in your handouts,
Okay.
right? So you can keep looking, but it's not going to be there. But this is a really long 124 pages, right? So I didn't just print it out to hand out to you, but it'll be in the folder, and it's pretty much all of the graphs and charts from the National Association of Realtors. 89% of buyers bought their home through a real estate agent or broker. 41%, this is a useful little statistic, of the buyers found their agent through a referral from a friend or family member. And 9% used an agent they'd used before to buy or sell a house. About two-thirds of recent buyers only interviewed one agent before they found the agent they worked with, and 9 in 10 would use their agent again or recommend them to others. But the problem is that a lot less do so, right? The percentage, 9 in 10 said, I'd recommend my agent to others, but that was from people before. First-time home buyers wouldn't have had an agent before. But many real estate agents, the last time they communicate with their client is at the sign-off. And the last view is the agent in the parking lot waving at them as they drive away, right? And they never hear from them again, right? There's never any follow-up. So the number of people that refer, 90% pretty much said that they would use them again or refer them to other, but only 41% of the buyers found their agent through that process, right? So you have to become. I had a chiropractor appointment today, right? It was a review, right? And so we're going through the review, and the guy says things like, "Well, so you're doing well. That's fine. Who do you know that might need that's in pain or that might need a chiropractic appointment? Huh? Do you know of anybody? Huh? You think of anyone? Right? Huh? Huh? You know, and then he said, our website, have you ever thought about logging on, writing a review? Huh? Maybe a Yelp review, Google reviews, right? Would you? Huh? Well, will you do that? Right? See, even chiropractors are asking for this, right? So there's more. This is in that folder that I mentioned to you, but I'm just saying. All right, let's move forward. What you want to try to do is to get them down to the 5 top things, the 5 most important. And then go on. Besides those, is there something else you really want? If you could have something else, what would that be? If you could have one last thing, so you're trying to do all that. Share your value proposition. Present your benefits to buyers and let them know who you are. This step may seem to be focused on you, but in many ways, but remember the truth, customers don't care about what you can do, they care about what you can do for them. The way I like to put it is everybody's listening to the same radio station, and it's called WIIFM, which stands for What's in It for Me. Now, the value proposition is referred to the About Me of the Buyer's Guide, which is on eEdge, and in the blanks you might want to write down. This is something you ought to think about. Now, what I was going to share with you, because I could tell that this is an advanced group. So what I was going to share with you is one of the things that you're going to find. This is what your folder, by the way, which is in Google Drive. It's called Buyer Agreement. One of the things that I've thrown in here is the sample buyer dialogue. And this is what I ask about when I get into closing. Maybe I don't want to do that one now. But let me see, which one do I have here? Working with buyers. This is my list of questions, right? The things that I went to work for, prospecting. Why would I want to buy now? And that's probably not true. Why buy now? Why buy now? Problem of buyer loyalty. Don't listen to solution implementation. The first, asking questions, rapport building. So these are the questions that I always would ask. Qualifying questions. You will rarely sell a house to a buyer that you have not qualified. And these are the different areas, the way I would break it down. Urgency and motivation is where I would try to find out how soon do you want to be in your new home. Right? Do you currently rent or do you own? We rent. Oh, do you rent on a month-to-month basis or have you signed a fixed-term lease? We have a lease. Really? When is the lease up? 4 months. Well, is there a lot of demand? Of course there is right now for that apartment building, right? If we happen to find a house, let's say today, is there any way you'd be able to get out of that lease, right? Do you understand if they rent and they've signed a fixed term lease and they don't plan on doing anything until that lease is up, will the homes that are on the market be on the market in 4 months? No. All right. So also related to the urgency and motivation is, in fact, I mean, these are some of this is all in that section that I've given to you. This is what I would say. We spend a lot of time getting to know each other. I'd like to know you a little more personally. Now, this is when I turn the chair, is it okay if I ask you some personal questions? All right. And then that's where I would go through this. How soon do you want to be in your new home? Do you currently rent or do you own? Right, Lise, how soon could you move if I found you the right home? How long will you have to see homes today? If they say not very long, well, we, only till like 1, they might be talking to another agent at 1, right? Sometimes they double book. And I would ask him that last question, which is sometimes referred to as a sharp angle close. If we find you the right home today, are you ready to make a decision today? Right? Just so I have an understanding of where you are in the process. Supposing we happen to find your home today, are you in a position to make an offer today? Are you? And if they say no, why not? If they say, well, the wife says, well, my father said that he was going to give us the money, really for the down payment, and that we weren't to buy anything without him looking at it, because if we made an offer on a house and he hadn't had a chance to see it first, then he wasn't going to give us the money, and we can't buy a house without that. Guess who needs to be with us when we're looking at homes? Right? Guess, right? Right? Because, and what they're going to say, well, he wants us to just pick it out and then he'll go look at it later. No, that's not going to work, because what he's going to say, well, this can't be the best one, right? Right? So he has to see the others. If they say, yes, we're ready. I've had people say, yes, we're ready. What I would say to them, I did not say to people, let's go look at homes. Right? When we were leaving the office, I did not say, all right, let's go look at homes. I would say, let's go find your new home. Right? That's what we were getting in the car to do. We were not getting in the car to go look at homes. We were getting in the car to find their home. Right? And I wonder, if they say no, if we find the right home today, are you ready to make a decision today? And they say no, you want to know why they can't buy now, right? These are all urgency and motivation. Experience, again, I'm not going to read all these to you, but the idea is that I would add some of these questions. I have these both in a PowerPoint and in a Microsoft Word version in my Magic folder. But I would ask them, I usually ask them this question, are you working with other brokers because we're going to make a commitment? Have you ever homed before? Are you familiar with closing costs, financing alternatives? Home information, I would ask open-ended questions. The goal is to expand the list. I think I've already covered all this. Home, each feature. You said that you want 4 bedrooms. Is that an absolute requirement, or is it an ideal situation? Could you get by with 3? Get them pre-approved. Helps you know which homes to show. Facilitates the closing, which I put in parentheses, your commission. Lenders can detect problems that might make a loan difficult. For example, credit report errors, high debt balances, insufficient down payment could be corrected with time. I've had many clients who needed to work on things before they were able to buy. The only way we're going to know is if we know, right? And if they have mediocre credit, is it still possible then for them to buy a house? Yes. Yeah, right? They might have to go FHA. But do we want to know that before we put them in our car and drive them around? The dominant buying motive is what I believe you're really looking for, and sometimes it's difficult to tell just from your initial conversation. For example, I learned I had a woman that wanted to buy a house. She was a single woman wanting to buy a townhouse, and one of the complexes had what I considered to be a ridiculously high homeowner association fee. I thought it was just ridiculously high, and she ended up buying that one because the high homeowner association fee meant better security. Right? It was a much more secure place. It meant community facilities. It had its own gym. Right? They even had a little mini dry cleaner in it where you could drop off stuff and have it picked up. Right? They had parties. And do you understand? If I was assuming that the buyer's dominant motive was to spend the least amount of money to buy a particular property, I would have gotten that one wrong. Right, you understand? Just because there's a reason sometimes the homeowner association dues are high. Right? And that might have something to do with the dominant buying motive. Is it the school district? I've known people that would live in anything in Cupertino. Right? Anything. Right? That you could find them that they could get in with a shoehorn, they would buy. Right? Because they wanted the school district. So, but sometimes it's money, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is. But that's why we need to get them pre-approved. You understand this needs to be a thorough and unhurried meeting. More security, recreation and leisure. No point in asking a lot of questions if you don't listen to their responses. Right? You know, that's where I talk about taking notes. Make eye contact. Don't nod off. Snore. Don't interrupt them. Keep looking at your watch. Yes.
I learned something that was really interesting this past summer. I took this course, and there's recorders now that you can have. You can flip it on your clothes, and it looks like a pen. And it records everything you're saying, and you put it into your computer, and it transcribes everything, just in case you miss something.
It's a misdemeanor in California to do that without permission.
Oh, you
Yeah.
found before.
I'm just saying. The other thing is that there is a free app that you can get for any smartphone or tablet PC called Evernote. And Evernote not only will record audio, it allows you to take pictures and other kinds of notes. So for example, when showing homes, you can create a folder for that address. And you can record comments while you're there. You could take pictures of the ugly purple hairy wall hanger, right, that was on so that you remember which one, you remember which one it is. You can record your notes, you can record their notes, you could import into it MLS sheets and the flyer and things like that. That's called Evernote. It's a free, works on cell phone, smartphones, and on tablet PCs, but that's a good idea, right? Yeah. Evernote. All right, so what you need to do is work on what's called your value proposition for buyers. And one of the other things, is this the one, a good buy, exclusive commitment window list, working with buyers. That's not the one I wanted to do. What I would say, my value proposition was I wanted to help them get the most house for the least amount of money in today's market. Right? That was my... so let me just do this. And this is also in the package, and this is my buyer representation presentation, and you can look at, there may be some words here about using a buyer's agent. Now some of this is related to why not buy from the listing agent, but it explains what buyer's agents can do and how they're paid and why use them, and all of this I'm making available to you to use, and anyhow, those what?
I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. How do we access?
All right, what I'm going to do is, this is called Google, this is a Google lesson, okay, if you don't mind, a quick one. So I go to Google and I go to Google Documents. And once I'm in Google Documents, by the way, this is a useful thing to know how to do because you may have things you would like to share with a client. Notice this is called Buyer Agreement, and I'm going up here to More, and I'm going to go to Share. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it from private to anyone with the link, and I'm going to click on Save, and then I'm going to type in TIM, there's Tim, I'm going to type in Ross.
So in other words, to access your stuff, we have to have your authorization.
Yes.
Okay, which is understandable. I just want to make sure.
Right.
That if you're telling us we can access it, we get access.
Right. So I don't have everybody's. I don't have Noel's. I don't. Well, I don't. I have Coco. I know. You means you haven't sent me an email, or I haven't.
I need to send you.
You need to send me any.
Opened up a can of worms for that.
No, it's okay.
All right.
No. I was planning on doing this.
What you
And let me see if I have Anna's. No, I don't think so. So I'm going to go ahead and send this one out. The rest of you are going to just have to send me an email. Right? Well, let's see. Yeah, let me just see. What I'm going to do.
Now this is stuff you've developed over your career, and it's not just
And,
by the way.
Nope. I just don't have it yet. I may have sent it to you, sent things to you using a different email system, but those are the only Marias I have. So once I've done this, so just send me an email. All you want to send me an email. So I've now sent it to you, and I can add other people, and you should have access. All right? Wasn't that fun? So that's just a lot easier than for me to, this is the easiest way for me to send lots of different varied things to people. All right. So moving on, the part that I want to be sure we have plenty of time to spend on has to do with the buyer agreement. So what you're going to want to do, right, this is homework, and my buyer presentation has lots of this sort of stuff, is what would you say as a statement that would be your value proposition for buyers. There's an example. Because I have previewed so many properties, you will get a wide variety of information on local homes and be able to make an informed decision based on comparable properties when it's time to make an offer. Right? So this is the why should I hire you? There's an education process which leverage eEdge. eEdge is your online source. They have a home buying process. I used to have a binder where I'd print all this stuff out. Right? And so you should explain the showing process, the mortgage and loan process, the benefits of pre-approval, and describe making an offer and negotiating. Closing costs, this is why you want them to be pre-approved. People think that if they need 3% down, they only need 3% down. Right? People think if they're making a 10% down payment, they only need 10%. This is not true. Right? Depending on the kind of loan, it could easily be 4 or more points in addition to that. Right? And your mileage may vary. And so there are scripts here about the paperless transaction, which I would get people to use the e-signatures right from the beginning. E-signatures, and this is integrated into the Keller Williams system. Our program is better than the free one that comes with CAR, which is called Digital Ink. And I'm just saying you want them because the first time you write up an offer, you want to go through the contract with them. By the way, this assumes that you are capable of discussing what's in a purchase agreement upside down, right? Because you're not going to sit between them. Right? You understand? Stand over their shoulders. Right? What I would do is, they were sitting there, I would turn it around and point it to them. I used to give people a copy, buyers, of the CAR purchase agreement and have them read it and mark anything they did not understand so that when it came time to making an offer, I'd already had a chance to explain it to them rather than trying to do it at the time we're making an offer. Because there may be some things that they're going to say, well, why won't the seller pay for this? Or why do I have to, why? Right, and I'd rather have that conversation before we get there. Now my customer service commitment, this section is going to be helpful to you. And I may just make a copy. I think I already have one for you. This is a notepad file. I'm going to explain why in a minute. And so notice I just copied this. This is in the PDF version. And then down here a little bit later, after it goes through my commitment, and there's a expectations. And I'm going to explain how this works in a second. All right? And why I've copied those together. So we've met with them, we found their wants and needs, and we're ready to close. And by closing, what that means is we want them to sign an agreement that says they're going to work with us. They're going to work with us. All right. So this is my I call this, and since our parent company's in Texas, the two-step approach would be appropriate. Texas two-step approach. So, most agents spend too much time trying to locate properties and not enough time developing the working relationship. Boy, is that a true statement. If you look at it from the sellers, working with sellers, if we list properties, the first thing we do is we establish the relationship, right? You do your listing presentation and you get them to sign a listing agreement, and then you start marketing the properties. We take a listing, then we work to sell the property. We need to do the same with buyers. First, create the relationship, list the buyer, and then help them find the right property. Get out of the business. This one, by the way, is a big one. Get out of the business of finding buyers' property. Get into the business of convincing buyers they need to work with you exclusively. A chimp could be trained to find homes on the MLS. Right? Do you understand? If all you've got is that you can work the MLS computer, how many places can they go to find what's on the MLS? They could start with MLSlistings.com. They could start with Realtor.com. They could go to Intero's website and Coldwell Banker's website and Century 21's website and 4 different. You understand? They get the average, according to the NAR, the average buyer has about 6 home searches running based upon those automated emails, right? So this, back in the old days, we used to have this thing called a book, or the MLS. The MLS was a book, and we were the only ones that had the book. For those of you that are young and you're wondering, what it's a book. It's like a blog, only it's on paper. If you haven't, anyhow, they had to come to the office because we had the book. Right, they couldn't find homes unless we showed them the homes in the book. We don't have a book, right? It's all there. So when you should do this, not on the phone, when making agency disclosure. By the way, when does the California Civil Code say you're supposed to do agency disclosure? Anybody want to?
Before you actually, you're in the writing process? As soon as you talk to them.
The typical real estate agent will say, well, you do it when you're writing an offer. No, what it says is if you do it any later than that, you violated the law. That's the last possible moment to do it. The Civil Code says that as soon as your relationship moves from, I think the word they use is transient nature, to where you're actually representing somebody, that's when you're supposed to do agency disclosure. Huh? That's what it says. Right? As soon as you're acting as their agent, you're supposed to do agency disclosure. How many of you would like to be their agent before you show homes? The 3 sales. First, you sell them on talking to you. This is getting them to CITO, come into the office. The second sale is proving your value, and the third is getting them to make a commitment. It can be done verbally, emotionally, show them pictures of your children, or preferably in writing. This is my why don't they work with one agent? They don't have a problem with the way they are now looking for properties. They believe that they will be exposed to more properties working with several agents as opposed to one. If you can't convince them that they're wrong on this, you're going to have great difficulty. These are the questions that I used to use. Would you like to know how to locate the good buys on the market today? Would you like to know how to find the right property without worrying about someone else getting to it before you? Right? That would be my opening question. And then you have to show them that they have a problem, show them that it's affecting their situation, and show them that You can solve it by creating an exclusive relationship. What I used to say to people is, all right, and some of this is reflected in that long PowerPoint. How is it that a real estate agent could save you money when buying a home? Well, first of all, to show you all the homes that are actually on the market. That would include for sale by owners. It would include listings not in the MLS, right? It would include new homes that have come on the market, everything. The way for you to get the best buy is to see the most property. Would you agree with that? Right? Would you like to see all the properties that possibly fit your need? Right? Second, it would be better if the agent really knows and understands what you want and checks out the property before you do, so they're not wasting your time. Right? Do you understand? So that would mean previewing properties before showing them. Right? The other thing would be is to give you to know which ones are priced right and which ones are not priced right. That means doing a comparative market analysis on each home that you're showing. Now, most agents are not going to do this. Why? Because there's no agreement to work with them. Right? Do you understand? If you say, well, I have an agent for North Valley, I have an agent for the South County, I have an East Side agent, and I'm interviewing for a West Side agent. Maybe that could be you, right? And I apologize if this metaphor is not one that some people like, but the idea is if someone's dating four people, no one buys them a good birthday present. Right? Was that bad? Right? You understand? No one's going to spend a lot of money on your birthday present. So if you've got four agents, are any one of them going to be killing themselves, knocking themselves out trying to find the right home? No. Right? Because while I'm out previewing homes, you might be buying one from somebody else in North Valley. So the only way that I could devote the time to do all this is if you've made some sort of a commitment to work with me. The essence of this is you have to convince them that having one committed agent who knows and understands what they're looking for and is determined to find it is better than having a bunch of uncommitted agents who may not know and understand what they're looking for.
Second question, FSBOs, how do you find those? Just by knowing the area?
For sale by owners, you can find them in Craigslist. There's forsalebyowner.com. If you Google search, how do I find FSBOs, you'll find real estate agents have written things. There's there are services, Red X, Arch Telecom, which have for a subscription fee will email you every day lists of for sale by owners, and they get them. If you were to create a Google alert that said for sale by owner San Jose, FSBO San Jose, the Google does not index Craigslist, but all those other sites it would be scraping them for you. All right, so does everybody understand the essence of what you have to communicate, that this is in it for them? Now these are your choices, all right, as to creating a working relationship. One is you could do what most real estate agents do, which is say nothing and hope that they're not working with anyone else and that they're going to end up buying the home from you. A little bit better than that is to say, I want to be your agent. Can I be your agent? I'm your agent, aren't I? Right? Now, that's a little bit better, right? It's a little bit better because people say, sure, you can be our agent. But how many times have you asked somebody, are you working with an agent yet? And they say several. Right? Yeah. Then you could do the verbal commitment. The verbal commitment, this is my script, and I do understand it's a long one. I wrote out everything that I used to say, right? Just so you can take what you want from it. By the way, this is my transition is after I've done all of the wants and needs analysis. I'd say, is there anything I have not asked you about buying a home that you feel I should know? Right? Usually at this point they say, no, you've asked too much about buying a home. Right? There's nothing we can think of. What I'd like to do now is show you how I would like to work with you in buying a home and see if it is agreeable with you. First, I'd like to cover a few things with you to be sure that you understand how my profession works. I work on commission only. I do not get paid a salary. I do not get paid for my time, reimbursed for meals or gasoline. I'm self-employed. The seller pays the real estate fee. When we find a home, I'll be compensated with a portion of that fee. So you see, John and Mary, there's no fee that you will pay me for my service in helping you buy a home. Right? Now, I found that was necessary to say, because people didn't understand that, right? There are people that weren't necessarily being evil because they would say, oh yeah, we have an agent, we just want you to show us the homes, and then he's going to write up the offer for us, right?
Yeah, I have a client, and they said when they came to know I'm in this business and they want to buy a property, and they said like, how much do we have to pay you? I'm like, you're not going to pay me anything.
Right. There's a philosophical argument about who pays the commission. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a philosophical argument. The money comes from the buyer. Right? But on the closing statement, it's a credit from the seller. It's a debit to the seller and a credit to us. Right? But we don't need to get into that. They're not going to write us a check. We're going to talk about the different forms. One of the things I want to make sure that you're good at, because what I've found is the part that we've covered so far is not the hard part, right? The part that I've noticed that agents have difficulty with is getting people to put their signatures on a piece of paper, right? That's where I'm going with this. I would like to but I want you to know that when you leave my office today, you're probably going to see lots of for sale signs on properties from different real estate companies. When you look in the Homes magazines, I still have those newspapers, internet. I'll add that, and you're going to find ads for other properties from different companies. I want to make sure you know that my company is a member of the Multiple Listing Service, and I can show you any property with any sign on it. I can also show you any property that is advertised. And what I'm going to do, how about this? Right? I would like to request that if you see a sign on a property you'd like to see the inside of, that you call me and I'll make arrangements through the other company. If you see an ad, how about this? For a home that appeals, I can check it out and get you in the property. Now, John and Mary, that is an essential requirement for me to be compensated. If you look at a property with another realtor, there's a possibility that I would not be paid even if you came back to me and asked me to write the contract. Right? Is that true for new home builders? That statement. Absolutely true. Right? If they go and wander to most new homes builders, many of them, depends on the market, right, will pay an agent representing a buyer a commission of something, but only if the buyer takes the agent with them at the beginning or registers them at the beginning. After that, they won't pay. Also, if you see a property that says for sale by owner, I'll make arrangements to get you in it. I found that almost all for sale by owners cooperate with realtors who have a bona fide buyer interested in the property. That is also true. How do you feel about that, John and Mary? What I'm trying to say that if you would like to know, if you are, what I would like to know is if you're willing to make a commitment exclusively with me, if I'm going to take my time and energy to help you find a property, I'd like to know that you're willing to work with me exclusively, no other realtor. Would you be willing to do that? If any time you feel that I'm not doing my job properly, this does not mean that you are committed to continue to work with me. I hope, however, that if there's ever a time where I'm not doing something you think I ought to be doing, you let me know. Either I'll correct the problem or we can still part friends and you can work with another realtor. But I think it is to your advantage to work with one person who you like, trust, and feel comfortable with. Because that person in turn will put forth the most effort for you in helping you find a home. All right, that was my speech. And most people, if they say yes to this, you're not going to have a problem. I've had people that said yes, shook my hand, and bought a home from somebody else.
Oh, no.
Yes.
After they signed it?
This is on the signing thing. No signing yet. So, I guess I closed that. Let me just do this again. Where is it? Buyer loyalty. All right. This is the last slide. All right. So that was the verbal commitment. All right. That was the verbal commitment. Then there is a written commitment, and there's really three options for you. And the starting in reverse order of, there's the service pledge or the service guarantee, which I have copies of, and I also will show you how to write your own. The CAR broker non-exclusive and the CAR buyer broker exclusive. If you're wondering what those are, if you logged in, first of all, the multiple listing, the California Association of Realtors has something called a buyer's representation agreement. And they've changed the name, to there's a buyer representation agreement, a buyer representation agreement exclusive and non-exclusive. I think they got rid of the plain one. Let's start with the exclusive one, if you don't mind. That's this one here.
It says non-exclusive.
I know, the non-exclusive one. I was just seeing if you were paying attention. All right. And you were. All right. So the problem with this is that this is a 6-page form. It's a 6-page form. All right. And I have gotten many people to sign this form, although it wasn't always easy. Now, my idea, and some of this you're going to have to decide. By the way, when I got busier, it got easier. When I had 15 listings and I had other people that were wanting to buy homes and I didn't have any time, it was really easy for me to get people to do this because I didn't care. Right? I just didn't care. If they weren't going to sign it, I wasn't going to work with them. Right? But what I would do is, when one of the things about all of these, although having things online is nice, I would print this out and I would put it on the counter or the table when we're talking, and I would write and fill things in when I could. First of all, people are not going to sign a blank agreement. I've tried that. Just sign, I'll fill it in later and get it back to you. No, they're not. It has to be filled out. So by having it there and writing things in front of them, they're getting used to seeing it. Here is where I would summarize those 5 things that are most important to them. And the price range and things like that. And as we're going on, buyer representation, possible dual agency with seller, this means we would be showing them our listings too. That means a dual agency. Single agency, which wouldn't apply. That's only, there are some exclusive buyer brokerages that do not list homes. All right? But that's not us. So we wouldn't check that. And then other potential buyers, our company has other potential buyers, right? I might have other potential buyers in the same price range. Huh? And non-confidentiality of offers and confirmation. This is the hard part. Compensation to broker. Notice, it says notice. The California Civil Code says that any agreement to pay a real estate agent a commission in order to be binding must contain certain magic words. Those words must appear in the form in boldface, Helvetica, boldface, 10-point type or larger. Those words are: the amount or rate of a real estate commissions is not fixed by law. They are set by each broker individually and may be negotiable between buyer and broker. Real estate commission includes all fees to broker. If you do not have that sentence, you cannot enforce an agreement to pay a commission. Right? You understand? The Civil Code says if you don't have that, it's not enforceable. So what I used to do here is I would put in, I would check that box and put in a percentage. This is where it becomes interesting. What percentage would you like to put in? Well, most agents immediately say 3% or some 3.5%, right? What if the MLS is 2.5 and not 3? Then what do you do? Well, that's going to come up, right? So what I want to do is to go to the next paragraph, which explains how this works. All right. The next paragraph says broker's right to compensation. First of all, it says payment and credits. Buyer is responsible for payment of compensation provided for in this agreement. However, if anyone other than buyer compensates broker for services covered in the agreement, that amount shall be credited towards the buyer's obligation to pay. What this is saying is that whatever the seller is paying through the MLS is a credit towards what the buyer owes. But just so you understand, this agreement creates an obligation on the part of the buyer, all right, to pay you a certain amount of commission. Now, what I used to do when I first started doing this is I didn't check this box Because what this says, if it is more than that amount, supposing I were to put in 3 and it was 3.5, who gets the extra half? I did, right? But I found it was easier to say, I'll let the buyer have it, and I'll explain why. Now, one other thing about this is, which one am I doing? Is this the non-exclusive?
Yeah.
Okay. Broker's right to, this is the thing about, broker shall be entitled to the compensation provided for in paragraph 3A if during the representation or any exchange the buyer enters into an agreement to acquire property described on those terms that the buyer was introduced to buyer by broker or was one for which broker acted on buyer's behalf. So what this agreement says, the non-exclusive, says if I find you the house, or I negotiate the purchase of the house for you, you agree to use me as your agent, or you owe me money. That's what it says. Now, do you understand if somebody said, well, no, wait a second. Even if you find me the house I want to buy, I want to reserve the right to use another broker to write up the offer, right? I would have doubts whether or not you want to work with that person, right? So what I did, the way I made this work, I did 2 things to get people to sign. I actually used the other one too. But this one I found was a little bit easier. What I would do is I would take a look at what the average commission was being paid to the agent who represented the buyer. Okay. Let's say it's 2.75, right? Which is kind of close. I would put in 2.5 and maybe even less, maybe 2.25. The question I would have for you as to that number is, how bad do you want someone to sign one of these agreements? Right? How bad would you like somebody to sign one of these? And if you say, really bad, I would really like someone to sign one of these agreements, we could put in 2.25, at least under what the average is. Now, the way I've got this with the credit is anything that if it was a 3% commission, the buyer, if I put in 2.5 and it was a 3% commission, the buyer would get 0.5% credited towards the buyer's closing costs, right? So the buyer got anything above that amount. I'm giving them a lollipop to sign the agreement. What this also does is it is a violation of the MLS regulations for you as an agent of the buyer to try and change the commission arrangement by writing it up in the purchase contract, right? It's a violation. In other words, if it says you get $9,000, right, which I've seen stuff like that, you get $9,000, you get 2%. You, as a real estate agent, can't write up an offer that says we're changing that amount. But if it were 2%, and this agreement said 2.5, the buyer would owe you the half. The question the buyer would have is, well, does that mean I'm going to have to pay you for the half? And I'd say, no, we'll just ask the seller to give you a credit, right? So if it's more, you get to keep it. If it's less, we're going to ask the seller to give you a credit for that amount, right? You understand? So in escrow, seller credits buyer, buyer credits agent, right? For that difference, whatever that difference is. Yes?
As a new agent, though, aren't we have to go by what the broker, our company says.
Your broker has no problems with you using one of these agreements. This is a California Association of Realtors standard form.
I mean, aren't we set by like the 2.5%?
No. This is an agreement not with we're not trying to change what the MLS is paying us. This is an agreement between us and the buyer. This is an agreement between us and the buyer.
But don't we have to go by what our Keller Williams brokerage says to us as new agents? We can't go below 2.5%.
Well, that's a different thing. That's when you list the home.
Okay.
We're not talking about that.
Okay.
That's a different thing.
Okay.
So does this? I just want to make sure everybody understands this form, right? So I would make it a little bit less than what would be average. So there is a promise that they would get something. Right? By the way, if a real estate agent were going to make an agreement to give a buyer a little bit of money, would the buyer probably would prudence suggest that that agreement be in writing? What contract do we have that we might be able to write that up? How about this one? Right? Isn't that what this is doing? This is the form we use to give you a credit. By the way, I would make it clear to them that I would tell them what the commission was before they wrote an offer on any home. In fact, I'd let them know when I was showing them the home. You see, normally buyers don't care how much commission you get. Now they care. I've had people say, wow, this one's only doing half because they're not getting anything extra. Let's look at the one that says 3, right? Do you understand that by doing this, by lowering it a little bit below what's average, so that you've got a lollipop to give to the buyer, the chances that they're going to sign this has just gone up, right? Because the chances that they're going to ever owe me money is almost zero unless they just buy a house without me, right? Do you understand? But this whole idea is, what does the commission say? If it's under 2.5, could I, as an agent, waive it? If it was 2.25, could I waive it for that particular property and say I'm willing to just take the 2.25? Why not? Right? Do you understand? We can negotiate. We can talk about that. So the only difference between this, by the way, and the this is the non-exclusive, and the exclusive is that the exclusive doesn't have that first paragraph under the right of compensation. It says that if the buyer buys anything from anybody during the term of this agreement, you get paid a commission. Right? This one says, just want to make sure everybody understands the difference. The non-exclusive says, if I introduce the buyer to the property or negotiate on the buyer's behalf, I get a commission. Right? This does not seem like a high standard. And if you're giving the buyer a little bit of the money, typically, they might sign this. The other thing that I found in getting people to sign this had to do with this paragraph up here. Paragraph 1, beginning on and ending on. I used to ask people, well, how long do what's the maximum amount of time you can see yourself taking in buying a house? I'm going to say 8 months, I don't know. I'd write in 8 months. Right? I'd make the agreement for a year. I'd make the agreement forever practically, right? And that was hard to get people to sign. Right? That was really hard to get people to sign. I had couples that went outside and I could hear them arguing with each other for an hour, and they eventually came back in and signed. Right? And you understand, it was a battle to get people to sign this agreement. And then it hit me, instead of making it for a long period of time, why don't I make it for a short period of time? And so then I started to say, give me 2 weekends. Right? I'm sure that you're going to be so happy with the way I work. Let's just agree to do it for a couple of weeks. Right? And if at the end of 2 weeks you've decided that it isn't worth it, because they would always say, well, what if it doesn't work out, and what if we don't like each other, and what if you're not doing a good job, and now we're locked in? Then I would write what's called a weasel clause. That's not a legal term. That would, basically say you give me notice. So I just said, rather than going through all the weaseling out, just make it for a short period of time, and then it's easier once you've got it to extend it than it is to start with a really long one. Right? Now I'm getting people to sign this all the time. Right? Because there was an agreement to pay them some money. They got something for it. It was in writing. It was legally enforceable, which means they could sue me too. Right? You understand? They got some money. You get the idea. Right? So, yeah.
So that means whoever is willing to work with me, I have to have signed this form.
No, you don't have to. There's no have to's yet.
Okay.
There is a third choice, which is called a service pledge or a service guarantee. Right? This is the light version. And remember I had taken some of this text from my service commitment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in the file as well. But what I'm on Google Drive, and this is called buyer agreement. And I'm putting that text because that came out of the PDF. But where is my buyer service pledge? Is that the one that was done in? This is a. I'm going to get rid of that. That's a text version of it, and this is what it looked like. And again, I'm going to get rid of I was elsewhere when I did that. And what this was, first of all, when I originally did this, and I have some samples, some from Keller Williams, some from other people, and they called it, most agents call this a buyer loyalty agreement. What I don't like, and I found ineffective, is if you, and I've actually heard experienced agents at the office talking to newer agents, explaining what they say when it comes to this, and what they say is, well, you know, where you work, if they told you that they weren't going to pay you, would you show up for work? Of course not. So I can't be expected to work if you're not going to agree to work with me. You understand? This is all about me, if I'm saying that. It's not what's in it for them. So do you understand what I did is I at first I called this a buyer service pledge, and then I called it a buyer service guarantee. And so basically what this does is it goes through all the things that I'm going to do to help them buy a home. This is my pledge to you as to my service. And in exchange, I'm asking that you work with me exclusively. Is that okay? Right? Now, this form, right, and this is a copy, and I have a text version of it if you, so you can, like, I would put in your name, right? You know. This does not contain the magic words. Right, you understand? The legally binding magic words I can take. Now, what is the chance that we're going to take somebody to small claims court and sue them anyhow over this? Probably we might, you might. But if they, what would be the best piece of paper to get them to sign the exclusive buyer representation agreement? Right? That would be the best one to get them to sign. I used to get people to sign it a lot. Because, I mean, first of all, if you get busy, let's say you can only work effectively with 3 motivated buyers at any one time, right? If you have 4, it becomes really easy to explain this to people, right? What's really hard is that if you have no one, and this is your first interview, and you're starting off with the buyer, you know, exclusive representation agreement, and you may not have the fortitude necessary to get them to sign it, right? But once I got busy, I didn't have any trouble getting them to sign it because I didn't care, right? I was already busy, right? A quantity solves the quality problems, right? If your buyers aren't good enough, you need more buyers.
How often did you reduce the commission, like to 2.5 or 2.25?
Oh, I would do it. I would just a lot. I would always do it when I found that if it was 3% was and I said 2.75. If it was 2.75 and I said 2.5. If I showed them that I was giving them a little, and I used to, if they're first-time home buyers, I would say, I know how hard it is for a first-time home buyer to buy a home, and you know we're trying to get you in with a shoehorn, and there's all these closing costs, and because I know your folks are going to be happy and refer people to me, you know, I'm going to help you get into your first home, right? And I'm going to give you a little bit as a credit, right? Once I gave them the lollipop, and I made it for a short period of time, they started signing this form, right?
So could you do something like, if, let's say, if the commission is 3%, you would get credited with 25% of that?
Well, you can, if you start making, this is already a complicated form.
Okay.
I'm just saying it's already complicated. And it takes, this is a 6-page form, right? That the full, in its full glory. Let me find it, all right? So that was page 1, that's page 2.
It says 11.
No, that was the date that they modified it. See up here, this is page 4 of 6. And then the last 2 pages are really the inspection advisory, which I used to go over with people. I used to go through that. Right? So it's really 4 pages of legalese about buying and 2 pages about the inspection advisory. And, and there's arbitration and mediation and all that stuff is in there.
Can you explain to them the difference between arbitration and mediation?
Yes, there's forms. There are consumer Q&As available from the California Association of Realtors, little brochures. My explanation is that mediation is like marriage counseling, and arbitration is divorce court. Right? You can go to marriage counseling, and the marriage counselor says you ought not to smoke cigars inside the house, right? And she says I like cigars. No, anyhow, right? And so, but you understand, you don't have to follow their advice, do you? No, you don't have to follow their advice. But then what happens? In divorce court, right? And that's binding. The most important difference in arbitration and exclusion from arbitration is small claims. The reality is, if we were ever going to do this, we would do it in small claims. Because even if you go to arbitration, you have to hire a lawyer, and and by the way, nobody is going to be on the real estate agent's side, and the chances of you collecting a commission in court when you didn't sell, it's hard.
Well, doesn't Santa Clara County requires mediation?
Santa Clara County requires not only mediation is required in the state of California for civil disputes. Arbitration is actually a requirement in Santa Clara County as well, although it's not binding arbitration. This makes it binding. Santa Clara County requires arbitration in civil cases like this. Yes.
So you said go, if you make short like 2.5, so give me chance 2.5, then I will study, I will show buyers, this is, I think you might like that. Then 2.5 passed, so I will ask another contract form if we couldn't, if they were not happy what I explained short, right?
Wait.
To keep my commission, because this agreement, we will sign 2.5 weeks. We will.
Right. And then at the end, what I would just do is say, well, are you happy? Let's extend it.
So
You see, what I found is that if people signed an agreement, what I wanted to do was break the cycle of abuse, right? I wanted to break the cycle of them riding around with other agents on the weekends, right? And so if I was able to do that even for a short period of time, and you do a really good job, and one of the programs you need to learn, in my opinion, is the Realtor Property Resource. Right, and there are videos online where you can learn the Realtor Property Resource. And what that allows you to do is to do a property analysis for a buyer with comps and things like that very quickly, and it looks very elegant. So if you do a really good job, you see what most agents do, and I have to admit I used to do this, because if they don't have a commitment to me, I don't really have a commitment to them, so I'm not previewing properties. Right? So you're getting lost driving to the house. Right, you park at the wrong end of this huge condo complex, and it takes you 30 minutes wandering through it with a map, a compass, asking for directions. You need bottled water, right? I remember doing this, and I'd say, well, here's a pool. I wanted to show you the pool. Oh, here's another pool. Here's another pool. I wanted to, and at this point they know that you have never been there before, right? And then they say, well, is this a good deal? Is this a good price? What are the units selling for? Have you done a market analysis on all of them? No. Why should you? Because they're talking to a bunch of other agents, right? You don't have time. If they're talking to a bunch of agents, you can't do all that. And I used to say to them, any agent who promises to do all that work without a commitment is either stupid or lying. Right? Of course they're not. Right? No, they can't. And I used to say to people, it's easier to get business when you got business, right? And I would say to people, I'm sure they'd say, well, not everybody makes us sign this. And I said, I bet, all the new non-productive agents, right? I'll bet you can find somebody who's got a lot of free time, who hasn't been around very long, that'll be willing to do it without this. But nobody good is going to do this. Yeah.
To be clear, so this is actually a buyer-broker agreement, right?
It is a buyer-broker agreement.
Okay, and then so if you're giving them
You could use either of them. The credit, that paragraph is the same on both of them.
Okay, so.
The only difference between exclusive and non-exclusive is that non-exclusive says that you have to introduce them to their property or negotiate, and exclusive says they just have to buy. But that paragraph, the paragraph that talks about compensation, is word for word the same in both forms.
Okay. And then the buyer service guarantee is just another.
It's just a piece of paper for them to sign that says that they pledge to work with you. See, because what'll happen is it's not. Which is the best? Somebody here must be a Superman fan. Which is the best type of kryptonite? If you're Lex Luthor, one is stronger than the other. This isn't the strongest kryptonite, but it's stronger. What I mean by that is, I would say this if I'm talking to a buyer and I would say, "Are you working with an agent yet?" And they say, "Yeah, we're working with an agent." I'd say, "Okay, that's great. So you have an exclusive arrangement to work with this agent." Yeah. So you signed something, right? You signed an exclusive agreement to work with an agent. Is that what you're saying? Now, and when they say, "Well, no, we never signed anything." Oh, so you don't have an agent yet, right? You need to understand, if you don't think this happens, you haven't represented enough buyers. Right? Because you're going to have people that you think would never leave you, and they're going to call you up excited one day because they bought a house from somebody else. Right? And that hurts. So then if I were hungry and a little cruel, I might say, "Well, can you show me the piece of paper you signed? Bring it." Right? And then if I saw that it was a pledge, I would know that it's not a legally binding agreement. And what I would say, my question was, when I was doing this, was, so what you're saying is that if I found you the right home, is the perfect home, exactly what you're looking for, you don't even want me to call you. You don't even want to hear about it. Right? Is that what you're saying? Don't call. Right? And I've had people stammer, and like one guy said, "Well, it was a friend of my wife." Right? That didn't bother me. I've had good friends of mine use other agents. Right? I wasn't going to stop me. Right? And then he said, "Well, I'll have to ask my wife and see how good of a friend it is." I don't know. Right? The husband couldn't answer that question. Right? But do you understand how hard is the other agent going to be pushing?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you've got this agreement for a short period of time, and let's say the person says, "Well, so-and-so will give me more of a discount."
I bet they will.
And so wait until your agreement terminates.
Well, the people like that aren't going to sign it in the first place. That's my experience. And they always can find a cheaper one. I used to say to people, the three most expensive things in the world for most of us are a cheap accountant, right? Usually followed by a cheap lawyer, right? And the third is a cheap real estate agent. See, if you don't sell them on the idea that this is a complicated process and having somebody who's an experienced, knowledgeable professional is going to save them money. The other thing that I had always used to say on agents would discount their commission is, "Oh yeah, so their way of getting you to work with them is they're going to give their money to you. How do you think they're going to work for you negotiating with the seller? Their close is to give away money. If they'll give their money away that quickly, they'll give your money away even quicker, right? And so if they can't even negotiate for their own paycheck, they're not going to negotiate for yours. So you can't, I didn't worry about that. What you need are more buyers. Because most people, what would happen is in 2 weeks, you got to know them, you built rapport, you've been to coffee, you've met the kids, right? You become part of the family. But I have had people, I've had people go buy the house from somebody else. They met an agent at a listing who offered them money, right? So
when in business brokerage, they have similar form, but they have a different clause in there. And there's a clause that says, if you purchase any property or business that we've shown you within 180 days
Right.
after termination of this agreement, you owe us commission.
Yeah.
Because that's what they would do.
Yeah, it's the commercial brokerage. This is called, we used to call it a send out slip, but there's a similar agreement. So we're going to close ask for the business, right? Is there any questions about those different agreements?
Is it better to do the exclusive then?
It's the exclusive is the ironclad one, but what most of you are probably going to do is the guarantee or the service pledge. Right, this has been my experience. This is the easiest thing to get people to sign. Right, and then you're also the advantage of the service pledge, which is it's in that folder, which it's in fact I've not only included that one, I've included a couple of others. One of the things which I did is, you notice there's my expectations, and this is in your material plus my 10-point plan. I put all that text in there, and you could make your own. And one of the other samples that I've included in that folder, they've added in, this is from a Keller Williams agent, they've added in a clause for the buyer that they are going to get pre-approved. Right? And so you can, that one you can write your own. Right? You understand? And there's lots of samples of it. It's way better to have them sign something in writing, so that when somebody asks them if they've signed a written agreement, they'll say yes.
So on the non-exclusive, does that mean they can work with another realtor?
It means that you could lose out if they went to a for sale by owner or a new home subdivision, or they went to an open house that you did not introduce them to, or they signed up for another email alerts and with a different price range than the one they did with you, and they found a house there. Yeah, there's holes in that one.
So do the exclusive mean?
Exclusive means if they buy during the time period, they use you. Right? Right? And that one, that's the one when I would make them, that's the one I use the most. All right? But you understand, I had enough business that I wasn't hurting, and once I gave them a little money, I told them I'd negotiate with them if it was something that was too low, I would say, this amount of commission is not going to keep you from buying a home. I guarantee that what I want is for you to be happy and get the home you want, and if it comes in low, the reason we're doing this is because I'm making an agreement to help you out on certain properties. And an agreement, if it's above 2.5, I'm going to give you the difference, right? And that kind of an agreement ought to be in writing, and so this is the form we use when an agent is willing to help somebody like you buy your first home, right? I was always talking as much as I possibly could about what's in it for them, why this is good for them, why this is going to help them, right? They're going to save money, they're going to get more house, right? Especially when I shortened it, you could try a month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? You can. I found 2 weeks was always, they would agree to that, and I would say, look, I'm going to really try to find you the home in 2 weeks, you know. And then if you do a really good job, there's no issue. It's a lot easier to get them to extend this. A lot easier. All right. So I mean, those are the advantage of the guarantee is that you get all the commission. It just says, I agreed to work with you. The disadvantage of the guarantee, it's not a legally binding agreement. All right? And so closing, we're going to watch one more video, I think, and then we're going to be closing. Wouldn't that be nice? So this is called the close-in action. And all of this stuff, by the way, I found online as part of the Ignite series. Power Session 7. And so there's also a series which we're not going to have time to go through today, but maybe I'll do it. Objection handlers, how am I doing? So this one won't take very long. But I won't block it.
Needs analysis. The systematic process of collecting information about needs, wants, and desires that is
Yeah, I know.
Close. To bring to an end. Everything we've covered so far has paved the way for a successful close. You've set the stage, completed a needs analysis, shared your value proposition, educated your buyers, and set service expectations. Now it's time for the close. At this step, you will make the commitment to work together. All questions have been answered, and most likely, any objections have already been swept off the table. No doubt, there has already been a lot of positive body language. Here are a few different closings that can work with buyers. Which close will work best for you? Option 1.
So what we're going to do now is sign the buyer representation agreement, which puts me to work for you. You're going to give me the tools I need to represent you in your purchase. With this tool, I have the opportunity to negotiate for you and get you the best price. And getting the best price is important to you, isn't it? Perfect. Let's do the right thing and sign the buyer representation agreement and put me to work for you now.
Option 2.
Can you see how it would benefit you to have a professional looking out for your best interest as you search for the best home and negotiate to get the best deal? Great. So now we are at the point where you can hire me to move forward in helping you find the right home. Here's how we take care of that. Just okay the agreement right here.
Option 3.
We call this agreement a loyalty agreement, where I agree to be loyal to you, take no action detrimental to your best interest, and fully represent you to find the best home at the right price. It's a reciprocal agreement in that I ask you to give me your loyalty in exchange for me working nonstop to find you the best home at the lowest price in the least amount of time.
Keller Williams research shows that 91% of Keller Williams agents conduct a buyer consultation before showing a buyer any houses. Do it right, and you will close more buyers in less time. Do it wrong, or skip it altogether, and you will spend more time closing fewer transactions. The choice is yours. Exercise. Pick the close that works best for you, and role play it with a partner in class.
In my folder, which there's this is from a Keller Williams agent someplace else, La Jolla, San Diego, and basically this group of 10 is the same group, and this is pretty much the same as the expectations, but she's put in her name, and just put that on a piece of stationery, and which you can also download from kw.com. I'm just pointing that out to you.
No problem for us to copy that.
No, and this is one from an agent. That one she copied right out of this handout. So yes, you can copy that. This one is just an example. Dominic, I know Dominic. He's from England. Who would think he's from England with a name like Dominic Godfrey? And he's an agent in Morgan Hill, Billy. And this is I'm copying his. I wouldn't do, but it looks like he's copied the same 10 things. So you have his. If you were to Google search buyer loyalty agreement, buyer representation agreement, buyer broker agreement, you're going to find yourself inundated with them. If there are, you could get a designation called an ABR, which stands for Accredited Buyers Representative, and they have classes you can take on this. You can find lots of stuff about this. All right, and then the last thing is these are sample of the closes, and the last thing, and I'm probably going to do a class at some point on objections, a little bit more in depth than this, but I just thought I would do this. Not they don't always sign
Objections to the
right
buyer
away.
representation agreement. Objection 1. I don't want to sign anything. I want to be free to work with other agents.
When you engage me as your real estate sales representative, you give me the tools that I need to represent you. That means I get to answer you in a paragraph rather than a sentence. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Naturally, when you sign the buyer representation agreement with me, I am contractually obligated to share any information about the seller situation that I find out. For example, if it's a divorce, a relocation, or estate sale, as a sub-agent of the seller, that means that I do not represent sign the buyer representation agreement today.
Just a note, this video is made for use throughout the United States. Sub-agency is no longer included in the multiple listing service for our MLS, or for that matter, virtually any of them in California. So the idea that unless you have a buyer agreement, that you can't say the good things to the buyer that you find out is not true, right? It's not true. So I'm just saying, forget that one, right? That part, at least that part of it. You understand, under California law, you represent the buyer whether or not, there's no automatic sub-agency. You'll have to ask me later to explain that, but there's no sub-agency. There is no sub-agency in California. How about that?
That's
Objection
new.
2.
What?
That's relatively new.
Well, more than
What it used to
15 years or so ago.
Yeah.
Since 1980, it's been a long time.
If I change my mind during this 30-day period,
I understand completely. Think of this agreement as a form of going steady, not marriage. If you decide at any time you don't want to go steady anymore, we can just break up. There's no need for a divorce, and you can break up with me any time if I'm not meeting your expectations. If you feel comfortable with that, we can just go ahead and sign the agreement today.
objection 3.
That one would not apply to the two CAR forms unless you put in a weasel clause, right? The weasel clause is that they can weasel out by telling you they don't like it. But you're just saying, right?
I don't need to work with an agent. I can find a home on my own through the internet.
I know how you feel. As you know, over 90% of buyers right now find their properties on the internet. What you may not know is that all the costs of working with me as your buyer's agent are completely paid by the seller. And if you were to work directly with the listing agent or the seller, their job is to sell you the homes for the most amount of money. My job as your buyer's agent is to help you buy for the least amount of money in the shortest amount of time, and that is what you want, isn't it?
Exercise.
All right.
Find a partner in class.
I'm going to just point one other. Where's my buyer? Working with buyers 2, is that it?
I didn't realize the percentage of buyers that find homes is 90% on the internet.
They use the internet.
Right.
That doesn't mean they find the home. That's not exactly what
search.
they search for the home. All right. One last thing, and then we'll be done. I promise. I'm looking for, where's my buyer representation by broker? All right, this is it. All right. So this is my long buyer representation. I broke it down into why use a buyer's agent. All right, and there's exposure to the best buys, and then there's slides on this, negotiating the offer and closing the sale. I would tell people finding you the home to buy is the easy part. All right, that's the easy part. Negotiating the best deal for you and protecting your interests. This is a huge investment. For example, the buyer inspection advisory, I would go over that with them. There's a booklet that you're going to find called, we used to call it the Green Book. It's the Environmental Hazards booklet. Right? Most real estate agents I know have never read it. I would have that and I would show it to them. There's stuff about formaldehyde, radon, asbestos, lead, earthquake safety, right? I would talk to them about the natural hazards disclosure. I would show them a sample. I would explain the benefit of getting an environmental report in addition to the basic coverage. Right? And because the environmental report shows environmental hazards, this is not a default setting. Normally, the seller doesn't pay for that.
You can do that all through JCP?
Yes. I would talk to them about home warranties, and I'd have copies of the home warranty brochures and talk to them about other things that could be covered. I made this a long meeting, right? Do you understand why I would talk about all those things? Right? Because if all I'm doing is talking about finding the home, chances are they're going to conclude that I can do that on the internet, right? And the answer is they probably can. They can find the homes. But all those other things, understanding all those reports, inspections, and disclosures. In fact, one of the classes that Renee, that's not in the schedule because There are several classes that are not in the schedule, but I'm going to do a class on inspections and reports, right, where we're going to go through some samples, because explaining what a termite report means to a buyer, explaining what homeowner association documents really say, right, and what parts to look out for and what parts to read, all of this is involved in negotiating and closing, right? And so in my exposure to as your buyer assistant, but I would also talk about all these other types of things, right? I would bring in all that stuff, right, into the room, and I would go through it with them, just so this is part of the education, so that they understood how many things could go wrong.
Scare 'em.
Right. Well, by the way, have you ever heard of a buyer who bought a house and really wished they hadn't afterwards? Right. All right.
Did they still require that all the, like the termite reports be filed with the state?
That's been